Hey folks, Sam Green here. I just recently got to see an artist talk by Zoe Frank, who's a figurative painter, oil painter, and she does some incredible work. And she presented this idea to me that I think was so simple, but so important to think about. And the idea was that it's not what you paint; it's how you paint. And in my class, I get so many questions about subject matter and content and all that. And so this week I had a good idea for my class. I thought I would have all of the students send me their images ahead of time of what they were planning on painting, and then I was going to redistribute those images so everybody gets a different image to paint than they were anticipating. Kind of cruel, maybe, but focusing on the idea of like it's how you paint this thing. It's not what it is that matters so much. It's just your approach to it as an artist and as a painter. All that being said, I thought it was only fair that I participated in this as well. So I redistributed the images. I used my own image and then in the mix, and then randomized everything. And so I'm actually painting from one of my students' photographs. And I got to be honest, I was a little terrified when I started because it's just not what I would have chosen. It's not what I would have focused on. And so I had to sort of find myself within that photo. So let's dive right into this. Let's take a look at the image, and then we'll get right into the demo. Okay, folks, here is the randomly selected image that I got in participating in this prompt. And I won't lie to you. As soon as I saw this, my first emotion was nervous, anxious. That's not a criticism of the student who chose this image. I think we all gravitate towards different things, which I strongly encourage. But for me, I was very overwhelmed with how much busyness was going on in this image. I'm actually someone who likes moments of calm. I like busyness, but I like moments of calm. I like sort of flatter moments. And I felt like this was a piece that didn't ever have that release of a flat moment, didn't ever have that release of calm. And so I knew right away that this was going to be hard for me. So what I decided to do with this one, and without having too much of a plan, I knew that, it scared me because I felt like I had this shape, and I felt like I had this shape, and I felt like I had this shape, basically. And, those sort of three shapes, and then within each of those shapes, again, there was all that busyness, all that craziness, all these little tiny marks, where you're sort of peeking through the trees, and the tree has light on it, and the tree has snow on it. Just a lot going on. And so to start, I think what I'm going to do is crop it right out of the gate, because I want to create sort of a more interesting space. So I'm going to use a vertical canvas to create that more interesting space, as opposed to before where it was sort of all of this was sort of sitting on top of the snow. Now this tree coming forward has a little bit more of a presence, and so it changes what's happening with the space a little bit more. I can start to recognize this a little easier. I can start to see some of those bigger shapes a little easier, and then before you know it, there's sort of more going on with these big shapes. And I'm hoping that if I focus more on these big shapes, that I'm not going to get stuck or anxious about all the craziness going on within them. And so I know that that's something that I'm going to have to really work on and really think about in there. I like this sort of little peekaboo moment back here, but I know that all this is going to be tough. There's sort of a clean tree here that I think I might include. Shapes like that I can sort of pull out to show the viewer what is happening and what's going on. Another thing I like is I like this blue, how this blue dips down in the shadow of the snow. I like how that dips down. If you look over here, I really like that, kind of showing the volume of the snow. And so there's little details like that I'm sort of already gravitating towards, already grabbing onto. And again, now I'm just trying to look at this big shape, this sort of warm green here next to this cooler green, darker green on this side. And so just trying to show that this is in front of this back here. So, trying to get the viewer to sort of move through the space a little bit more rather than just getting stuck in all those super fine details. So, hoping that, you can sort of enter in, hit the lighter tree, hit the other tree, and then go back into this sort of little cavern back here. Ideally, that's the hope. There's no sort of guarantees with something like this. One of the things I know I'm going to have to think about and work on is not pushing this too far. Is showing these big shapes, maybe showing a little bit of detail within the trees, but pulling back, not showing too much detail, because again, with the time I'm giving myself, I think it's something that can really get overstated. And so I'm really just going to focus on those big shapes here. Again, these sort of triangles coming out here is a nice, those are nice shapes, and that suggests the tree. It suggests the type of tree in a really, really simple way. So again, still a little nervous for this, but let's not delay it any longer. Let's dive right into it. So for this piece, I wanted to give myself about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, in that range somewhere to complete it. And so not a long time. And I knew that I had to dive right in and start addressing things right away and not sort of delay on getting it as finished as possible right away. And the surface I'm using, this is it's a homemade panel, and it's muslin married to a piece of MDF, and has a couple coats of gesso on top of that. So it's a hard board, but it has a little bit of fabric texture. Muslin's obviously very thin. It's very inexpensive, but has just a sort of subtle fabric texture to it that I really like. They're a great inexpensive way to make a panel that works well and actually looks really, really nice, I think. And right out of the gate here, I'm diving into some of this dark green that's there, and I'm using that to sort of shape some of the other things that I see. So I know that dark green is cooler than the green that's on the left, and I also know that dark green kind of creeps into some of that tree on the left, and so this tree on the left is a little bit warmer, and as you can see, I'm laying in big, harsh shapes. I've got kind of a large, kind of ugly brush that I find that's very helpful to lay in shapes that are not too specific, not too detailed. I will get specific with a few things, but right now with these big shapes, I'm just trying to lay them in, just trying to get a feel for the space, trying to move back in space like I had mentioned when we were dissecting the image. I laid in some of that light green and then used some of the rag to sort of pull that away. And one, because I felt like it was too dark when I laid it in, and I knew that when I used the rag, it would sort of just pick up a lot, and then it just kind of stains that muslin in a really nice way. And I like that. Again, the rag can sort of have some unexpected moments, but as you can see, I'm moving on very quickly. I'm not lingering on that tree. I laid in what I saw as the big shapes, and then was very quick to do the next thing. And I think this sort of peekaboo space that we're sort of seeing through the trees here is actually really lovely, and is actually really, really important. And so right now I'm just sort of experimenting with finding some warms and cools within there, because I think there are some warms and cools in a really nice way, and then using some of those cools to just kind of structure in some of that snow that's sort of blown out or washed out in the photo, but I wanted to have a little bit of just a few lines there to sort of give me a reference of where things were a little bit. And one of the things I often do that you just saw there is I use the palette knife to just scrape things out, and much like the rag where it gets most of the paint off, but you can sort of see what those initial shapes that you laid down were. And that way you're not sort of too focused on detail. You're just sort of looking at the big sort of sensations of light and dark, warm and cool, and you can really start to build the build the piece, build the painting a little bit. Here, my thought process is that I could sort of feel how quickly I wanted to complete this, and part of that is with that idea made me immediately realize that I had to sort of fill in, and I don't want to say fill in because that's sort of a naughty term, but I had to correct all those sort of white moments peeking through, and make sure that those were not going to sort of be left there, and those weren't going to overtake the painting. I laid in that first dark very, very quickly. It was very, very brushy, and then came in and sort of solidified that a little bit more, because I was actually feeling pretty confident with that shape, and was feeling pretty confident at this point too with the composition. And so it was the composition, I think, that was kind of flooring me and pushing me to move forward a little bit. It's also nice that I'm able to use the white of the muslin and of the gesso to structure this, right? So that there's obviously some bright snow in there, and I'm just using that muslin right now so that I can see what this composition is going to look like. I haven't filled that in yet because I can use that to sort of look at what it is that I'm trying to depict. That being said, I think the white is very bright. So I'm able to see that I like the composition, but I know that I need to sort of dull that down a little bit, and that I don't want to have sort of this like super bright white kind of taking over. So I have like what I'm just calling a muddy white, and what I mean by a muddy white is it's just white with I think it picked up a little bit of the browns and grays that were on my palette already, and so that it's not harsh white, so I can always make it go a little lighter if I want, but obviously is pretty bright. I'm also using that to sort of eliminate some of the drawing that I had underneath, some of those lines that I had underneath, to sort of structure it. You can obviously still see the ghost image of them there, but I didn't want to linger on those too long, because I felt like the structure was what I wanted. And then using that same sort of muddied white, and again, I say muddied white, but it really is pretty close to white, to start to build some of the scene that is sort of peeking through these two trees. I say two trees, but it's probably many more than that. And what I'm wanting to do is I want to sort of show those. I want to sort of give the sense that there's trees back there, the sense that there's this whole other landscape back there. But I don't want to be just sort of too repetitive in the way I'm laying that down. So I don't want to just put vertical lines in there and just with the sort of the sense of trees, but there's no sense of variation. There's no sort of interesting moments sort of within that mini landscape. It's kind of a little painting within a painting, which is what I like about it. And so I tried to be diverse with my mark making back there, but knew that was going to be actually a really important moment, because it sort of is the destination of where we're going down this path. And as I did that, I started to sort of notice that there were some other bright areas that were shining through that dark tree on the right-hand side, that I had just sort of seen as busyness before, and I was so focused on these big shapes. And then as my sort of vision came into focus, and as I could sort of see the painting, I could see that it needed sort of some of those marks in there, some of that variation in there. Obviously, I wasn't just going to have these be two blobs of flat green. That it does need, you have to acknowledge what's happening in there. And for me, this is a very tricky process, because what I'm doing while I'm working on this is I'm constantly, I'm working slowly, because I don't want to go too far. I don't want to just start drawing branch, and then all of the pine needles coming off of the branch, and then the snow falling on those pine needles. I'm trying to look at the image and see what it is that is really prominent in how I'm looking, in what I'm looking at, and so I'm kind of moving around a little bit. Obviously, too, with trying to finish this painting very, very quickly, I don't want to leave anything to the end. I don't want to just assume that things are going to work out, even if they're the things that are sort of relatively simple. And this blue here, I sort of had realized that I had left that a little too long, that I wanted to sort of put that in and see what that was going to look like, and make sure that that was going to be sort of the color that I wanted, and more importantly, really the value that I wanted. This whole painting has a really limited palette on it. I'm using sap green, yellow ochre, titanium white, ultramarine blue, and a little bit of burnt sienna. But beyond that, there's really no other colors. And again, I think that's because it is such a busy scene, and I'm using that limited palette to not overthink things. And I knew that blue that was in the sort of that's the shadow of the snow. I could bring that a little bit up into the trees as well. But again, this is a delicate process. I mean, this is I think it's really easy to sort of take that too far and to go too much with it. So you sort of see me making a mark, hesitating, thinking if it's holding the value that I want it to hold. At this point, what I'm doing physically is I'm sort of squinting and just looking at these shapes, trying to get some specificity of these, what are essentially medium-sized shapes. I looked at the big shapes. I think I was pleased with the big shapes, but I knew that I was going to have to kind of dial in a little bit and see some of these medium shapes. But I'm doing this part very, very slowly, because I don't want to just start blanketing the piece with these medium-sized shapes, because I think they'll take over and it will just seem sort of speckled, or I would anticipate that it would seem sort of speckled by the end of all of it. So I am continuing to work slowly, because I really don't want to. I don't want the viewer to sort of get lost in there. I want to just sort of have an acknowledgement of what's happening. I mentioned before about this sort of mini painting, this sort of painting within a painting. I felt like I had all vertical marks, and so I started to pick out some of the horizontal shapes, the sort of branches that were reaching over, to sort of mix up that little picture back there. And I was happy I did that, because those horizontal marks, I think, really helped create an interesting space. So you could see that there was still something else going on back there. That there was so much more that we couldn't really even sink our teeth into, or couldn't really visualize, but we're getting a pretty strong sense of. I know, I'm realizing that I need to sort of be with this tree that's on the left-hand side, that, I want that to sort of come forward a little bit. And with that, I want it to have a little bit of detail. That right now all these shapes are still kind of blobbish and kind of flat. And while that is something I want to hang on to, maybe not so much the blob, but that sort of, flat, big shape, I don't want to lose that, because I do like those moments of calm and those moments of release as a viewer. And that those big, sort of flat shapes can build space too. So I'm sort of going back and forth and just trying to find a nice balance, I think, of these marks. Really not, the key is not going too far, or not getting lost. Not sort of putting my head down for 45 minutes, coming up for air, and realizing that I've just sort of ruined this piece because I'm nitpicking on the size of each individual pine needle or branch. That I really want to maintain that sense of whole, and not lose that. And still, I think with a piece like this, as you sort of saw in that background area, it's important to have that variety of mark, and I want to bring that variety of mark into this piece as well. So I'm using a lot of brush in this piece, and partly that's because it's a very just organic. It's all organic. Like there's not really a straight line in here, with the exception of maybe some of the branches and trees. But I'm trying to use. I am trying to mix up my tools and get a feel for that. I think you've seen me use the palette knife. You've seen me use the rag, and definitely you've seen me use the brush a little bit here too. And right here, what I'm trying to do is get a kind of a specific silhouette with some of that darks, which I am trying to sort of slow down a little bit there and get a specificity of shape in there that I think is really, really important. Because when you sort of get a few of those moments of specificity, your eye and your mind kind of constructs and builds the rest of the tree. And at this point, I'm actually feeling pretty good. It's sort of coming together in a nice way, and certainly far more than I would have anticipated when I first looked at the image. I think that top left corner is still a little bit. I've used this term more than one time already, but it's still a little blobbish up there, and so I think that I do need to sort of slow down and think about that a little bit. So I know I need to get to that, but then I also, haven't really done this blue shape in the front that I'm doing now. That again, I don't want to wait to the end and then just sort of kill it with that shape. I want to make sure that the composition still works, and I'm treating this the same way I treat. The trees, which is like, I don't want to go too far. I don't want to start to nitpick and get all these perfect little slivers of light on these shadows. I want to show some of the slivers, but I don't think it's helpful to show all of them. I think that's something that can really kind of slow us down a little bit, and so I laid in some of the blue, and then coming back in with white and kind of carving back. Taking away some of the blue that I had just laid down, and I'm trying to get a basic feel for those shapes, but I'm really not looking too specifically at the image to get everything just right. I just really want that feel of that cool shadow on that sunlit snow, which I think is why the person who chose this image probably was looking at that sort of beautiful. I mean, it's such a classic scene that way, with the blue, shadow on the white snow is really it's a cool look. And then, as I mentioned before, that this sort of top left corner that was very blobbish, and I knew that I had to sort of come in there with some specificity and with some more intention, rather than what was just sort of left from the rag that I had done very early on in the beginning of this painting. And I'm enjoying it at this point because it's really starting to feel like this pine tree. That I'm not just sort of drawing the outline of it and letting it sort of and then filling in the outline. That suddenly the shapes in here are forming this pine tree in a way that's really making me believe it, and so I'm feeling happy about that. And I know that I don't want to kill that, and I know that I want to sort of finish this painting, without any huge decisions or huge marks or any of that. I actually want to finish it kind of slowly. You can see here I'm laid in some white and then scraping it out using my fingers and kind of smudging it out a little bit, because that was me recognizing that. When I first laid it in, that goes too far. And now I'm using a palette knife here to mix up my tool, and again, I don't want this to become a speckled mess of blue and white shapes on top of these green shapes. I want to still make sure that there's a strong feel from these big green shapes. And I found a little bit of light in this top right corner, and so I came in with a little bit of white for the snow, and then brought a little bit of that lighter green over into the right-hand side, which I thought would be a nice sort of way to sort of acknowledge that these two things were they were essentially the same, obviously not the same tree, but they were the same type of tree and in the same world. And just to have a little moment where they're sharing colors, I think is nice. But I knew I was just going to do it there because, again, I think that sense of dark and light is working in this painting. And again, if you look at the photo, you almost can't even see that sense of dark and light. It's far more subtle in the photo, and so I've really amped that up or sort of over dramatized it so that I can really kind of play with the light that's happening in this piece. There's a couple moments here and there that I'm sort of still nitpicking at. I think there's, I know I want to go in a little bit to the base of the tree and just sort of hopefully make that tree sort of feel like it's sitting on that snow as much as I can. But I'm definitely rounding the bend on the completion of this image. And again, I think that the danger is not pushing too much, not going too far. Giving myself a short amount of time, doing my best in that short amount of time, and then just sort of calling it done and letting it sit. And sort of, time will tell how much of a success that it is, but that I don't need to say too much to completely resolve every little thing. Again, I like these. I'm sort of enjoying some of these little marks here of sort of moments of light, moments of shadow. I hadn't put any of that blue into that other tree again, so I'm trying to sort of have everything acknowledge the existence of everything else in the piece, that so that it all sort of feels like it's in the same world together, but definitely not trying to overstate it, to overdo it. And so I think that that's sort of the final stage. One more little mark here, and again smudging that out, using a glove, using a finger to just sort of dull that back a little bit so it's not too prominent, so that we're still sort of focusing on these big shapes. As I looked at the image, I think I wanted to brighten up that snow just a little bit. And so I didn't want it to have sort of all be sort of blown out like it was in the photo. I wanted some sort of variation in there, and to sort of have it be a little bit dirty, I think is okay. So I came in with some straight white and cleaned up a few areas, but just wanted to sort of lightly acknowledge what was going on there. I shrunk down the back shape a little bit. So here's the finished piece here, and all in all, I'm quite happy with it. It's a nice departure from that original image. I think some unexpected things came up, so I'm happy that I was sort of dealt this hand, because it caused me to sort of push myself, be a little bit more creative, and I think I stayed true to the goals, not getting too stuck in the nitty-gritty stuff, maintaining my focus on those big shapes. So all in all, I'm going to call it a good day. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this demo.